Hey guys, my name is Pierre. I'm making an action sci-fi feature movie about a US Navy SEAL mission that goes awry. It's going to be half and half in terms of real life practical sets, and the other half is going to be done in 3D visual effects, specifically using Unreal Engine. Today, I'm going to be showing you how exactly I make the fog cone of light coming from the submersibles or any kind of light underwater within Unreal Engine. It could be used for a movie or a game or a blueprint. I'm going to start off by showing you how I use a spotlight to create that effect using 3 specific variables. Then I'm going to be talking about the exponential height fog and the 5 variables needed for that to create the fog in the world. And then I'm going to be talking about the console variables needed in the movie render queue to be able to render that fog cone of light to make it attractive and appealing and find that sweet spot within the parameters. So you can apply this either directly to a spotlight and parent the spotlight to a static mesh, or you can actually apply it to a blueprint and use it for your game as well. And we'll get into that a little later. So without further ado, let's get to it. Okay, so I've got a submersible right here, and I've got it already set up in a sequencer along with the camera already animated. So this is just a simple shot. This is to go hand in hand with the shot that we saw in Mad Max. And it's this shot here where the Furiosa in the truck is getting away. It's a long shot from a long lens from behind the truck on the side to the right, elevated, to give the impression that we're looking down on the truck. It's a simple shot where the submersible is moving forward and the camera tracks it in the distance. And to give you a better idea of shot composition, I'm going to put the grid on there. And these are the magical points that we recommend in cinematography to always follow the rules, which is stay on these points and leave some lead space when it's a chase sequence so that it just looks a lot more visually appealing. So you can move it anywhere around there. This appears to be the way I like it right now. So the next thing I'm going to do is today I'm going to go ahead and show you how to create that fog light, that cone of light that is fog. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pop out of this camera here, and then I'm going to find my submersible, and I'm going to increase the speed here, and I'm going to go to my submersible with a freehand camera that's not animated, so this way I can make some changes and some effects to it. So I have some lights on it right now already as it is, but I'm just going to keep it simple. First thing I'm going to do is we need to get a better view, so I'm going to click on lit here and I'm going to go to unlit. And now we can see the whole level naked. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go directly above the submersible, and then I'm going to click on light, and I'm going to add a spotlight. These spotlights are really what does it for fog. And in order to make sure I have this correct, I'm going to back up. See how there's a difference here in elevation for the spotlight and the fog, or the spotlight and the submersible? Well, here's a cool trick. If you take the submersible there, you click on that, you go to the location, right click, click on copy, and then I'm going to go find that spotlight, and now I'm going to just paste those coordinates. So now the spotlight is in this dead center of the submersible. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just bring that spotlight to the front here of that submersible. So it's going to go, we're going to put it right in the middle here. So just about there. I want to make sure it doesn't get, the light doesn't get impeded by the model of the submersible. I want to make it clear that this submersible is really ugly and not a production ready asset. This was a submersible done. If you followed any of my other videos, I created this in Meshy AI, which is a free AI software tool in which you can provide like planar images and it will go ahead and create a model for you. And so this is just a proxy. And I use this for blocking and for understanding the concepts. And today I'm going to go ahead and use that for this purpose. So next thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to make sure that the elevation is correct for the spotlight here. So I'm going to bring the spotlight up a little bit more. Then the next thing I'm going to do is press E, and it's going to allow me to change the angle of the cone. And then I'm going to go up above here and directly up above, and I want to make sure it's straight. And so we're going to turn that. And we can animate these. It'll look really cooler in the movie or in the game, where like, let's say it's, you know, the spotlight is shining forward, but yet there's something that's lurking underneath picked up on sonar. Well, a light would just turn on and the lights can move. So that's something that will come as we get a little more advanced. Right now it's on frame 6, and if I move the submersible, the light is not moving. So I'm going to bring it back to frame 6 there, and then I'm going to grab the spotlight here, and I'm going to come and bring it and drop it right onto the submersible there. And now it's parented underneath the submersible. So wherever the submersible moves, the light moves with it. Next thing I'm going to do now is I'm just going to change the angle of this light here. So for the outer cone, I'm going to go for 13 degrees. And for the inner cone, I'm going to do 12. So it's going to give us a little bit of a blur. Okay, so now for the features of the submersible. Well, this is what I want to show you here. So I'm going to go back to lit mode. These lights that are already in the submersible, I created them in a blueprint. And I'm going to show that a little on my next tutorial. But first, I just want to get the features locked in for you guys for the fog of the cone of light fog because this is one where it takes lots of finessing to learn, and I'm just going to give it to you guys straight and give you guys the cheat codes and the hacks on how to do it without having to spend hours and days on how to learn how to do it. So there's really about 3 main parameters within the spotlight that will allow you enable a fog cone. So the first thing is you need to bring your intensity rather high to 5,000. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to work with the attenuation radius, and then we're going to work with volumetric scattering intensity. Those are the 3 main ones. And you'll notice in here at the top, I have a favorites parameter list here that I created, and they're already all up here. This allows me to go to any light, whether I have like 10 lights on here or just 3, and I can manually change them right off the bat. I don't have to go and search. We all know how annoying that is to go and look for all these parameters. So I'm just going to go ahead and change these, and I'll explain what these are. So the attenuation radius, watch what happens. See the cone here? See that's about 1,000 units? Well, I'm going to bring that up to about 20. Let's go with 20,000 units. And now it extends way out to 20,000 units. So that looks a lot more realistic, especially for a deep sea underwater submersible. It has those big, powerful lights and needs to be able to see very far. The next thing we're going to work on is that intensity. That is way too low. We got to bring that up to about 5,000 for it to have an effect. And then the next one is the volumetric scattering intensity. So the volumetric scattering intensity here, it's a multiplier that controls how much that specific light contributes to scattering light within the volumetric fog itself. So if you think of it like this, we've got light intensity right here set at 5,000. This is the power of the light. It primarily dictates how brightly the light illuminates the surfaces, like the mountaintops here, or the grass, or these cliffs, or it could be rocks. And then number 2, we have the volumetric scattering, which is pretty much a volumetric scattering. So it's the value that then takes the intensity and multiplies it specifically for the interaction of the volumetric fog. So I'm going to bring this one up, way up, to about 6,000. I've gone as high as 20,000, and then I bring it down because in the beginning I couldn't see much. But this sweet spot here appears to be 6,000 when it comes to this distance of the camera that I've already animated here. And if you look closely, I'm using a long shot, and I'm using a lens of 130 millimeters, which is a very long lens. That's what this kind of shot is. It's meant to be this kind of long shot in which the vehicle that is running away is rather far or looks far. And then the enemy is going to come and close in and catch up. So let's go back to what it'll look like when it's lit. And now I'm going to go back to the camera itself. And I'm going to press escape so we can just see things a little bit better here. And now you can see the fog is starting to appear there. So mind you, the fog that you see here, this cone of light, now I could increase these settings, the settings that we just saw on here, significantly more and make this whole fog cone much whiter, much more realistic. But the thing is that what we're seeing in the actual viewport here is not the way it's going to render in movie render settings. That's a whole other thing. So the next thing I'm going to do is, after we have the spotlight locked down and rigged up the way we want it, now the next most important thing is the actual exponential height fog tool within Unreal. And you'll see here in my list of favorites, these are the 5 different parameters that we're going to be working with. So the fog density is how dense the fog is going to be. I use a 0.12. I noticed that if I go like 0.1 or 0.09, I don't see much fog. So that seems to be the sweet spot there. I've gone as high as 0.15 and it still looked great. So the next one here is the scattering distribution. This parameter of the exponential height fog is one that controls the shape and directionality of how light scatters throughout the volumetric fog cone here. So if we have a value of, let's say, 0, it's going to create isotropic scattering. So the light scatters equally in all directions. The result is a very diffuse, hazy, or glowy fog. You won't see a strong, defined light shaft or beam of light that we're actually shooting for. Instead, the fog is going to appear to glow softly around the light source, and the light will spread out very broadly. So that's not what we want. So I'm going for the full scale 1. Anything in between then is going to be the variant of whatever you choose. So I'm going to keep that scattering distribution at 1 because now we can actually see light of fog cone that we want. The next thing is the extinction scale. So the extinction scale parameter is one that controls the overall density and murkiness of the volumetric fog. So you can think of the extinction as how much light is lost or absorbed or scattered away as it travels through the fog. So if you think about it, a higher extinction scale value becomes denser and more opaque or murkier, and light penetrates far less into the fog before it's absorbed and scattered away. So this means the visibility through the fog will be reduced. So that's why I have it at a very low 1 or 0.15 here. I've tried the 0.5 before, but it didn't look good. It looked like as if it was just too murky around the frame. So this appears to be the sweet spot right here. So the next thing is the view distance. The view distance parameter is specifically for the volumetric fog. And what it does is it defines the maximum distance from the camera that the volumetric fog will be calculated and rendered at render time. So if you can find a way to keep your view distance small, that's much better for you in terms of being able to render higher quality content. So for long shots, it's obviously a lot harder. This is, believe it or not, this is not the longest shot I had. I previously did another landscape shot where the submersible was way out in the distance, and I had a view distance of like 6 million. It was insane. And no matter what I did, I just couldn't get it to look right. So I completely scrapped that, and I just did a long shot like this, one a lot closer, and the view distance itself is only at 150,000 units. and it's a lot more manageable from my GPU. The last one that I had to deal with was the near fade-in distance. So this is both for general fog as well as volumetric fog, and it defines the distance range over which the fog will gradually fade in from its starting point near the camera. The start distance, this is the point where the fog begins to appear. So if start distance is set at 0, the fog starts right at the camera. And if the fog distance is, let's say, 1000, the fog won't start appearing until 1000 units away from the camera. So because the camera is so far here, it doesn't really matter where we have it. It's not like as if the submersible is right in front of the camera. In that case, I would have to change that down to from 1000 to like maybe 100 or something, depending on how many units, how far the camera is from the submersible. So that's it. So the next thing I'm going to do here is render it out. Now you can see in the viewport here, it almost looks like as if there's like billowing smoke coming from the light. Well, that's not real billowing smoke. That is just the effect that you see from the real-time viewport rendering. So the viewport is optimized for interactive performance like the game, and its primary goal is to render a scene as quickly as possible. So you can build, move, and edit. And to achieve this, it makes these compromises. So there's lower sample counts per pixel, there's aggressive denoisers, there's lots of culling, as well as less accurate calculations. That's why you see that here. That's why if I move through it, it looks like as if it's moving through smoke. On the other hand, if we go ahead and we open up Movie Render Queue, and we go ahead and I'm going to find my setting that I usually do, which is the EXR AOVs. I'm going to open this up here. I'm just going to do 1080. I'm not going to do 4K to begin with the testing. I do a custom frame range from 0 to 150 frames here. It's just over 5 seconds. And the big difference when it comes to that cone of fog that we're building today is the specific console variables. So you can go ahead and add 4 array elements to your console variables, and this is what you're going to name them: grid pixel size, volumetric fog, grid pixel size Z, as well as temporal reprojection. Temporal reprojection needs to be set at 1. So the first thing here is the grid pixel size. I'm going to set this at 2, and that is already very low. So the grid pixel size, what that does is it controls the horizontal and vertical resolution of the 3D voxel grid used to calculate and render the volumetric fog. So it defines how many screen pixels correspond to 1 pixel or 3D pixel of the volumetric fog in the X and Y dimensions. So a lower value essentially means a higher quality, a refined grid or a finer grid. So the highest quality setting you can have on here is 1. And that means that 1 screen pixel maps to 1 voxel. So the voxels are effectively pixel sized in screen space, making the volumetric fog appear incredibly smooth and seamless. This is what we fight hard for, to get that down to 1. But if you have a GPU with less than 24 gigabytes of memory on your GPU, for example, like a 3090, NVIDIA 3090, you're not going to be able to go lower than 1, at least not without taking a lot more, putting a lot of numbers down in other places like the grid size Z, and I don't recommend that. So again, this has a huge impact on VRAM performance on your GPU. If you have a GPU with less than 24 gigabytes of VRAM, don't even bother to put this lower than 2. Your renderer, your whole Unreal Engine is going to crash as soon as you start the render. So what we have here is 2, and 2 screen pixels map to 1 voxel. Each voxel is a 2x2 pixels on the screen. So this creates a coarser grid, and if the light doesn't fill these larger voxels sufficiently, we will see the individual voxel shapes, which I've seen as lots of different circles. So you tend to see fog ends up being more like a circle. So basically the volumetric fog just means here that you can either have 0 or 1. 1 means the entire volumetric fog system within Unreal Engine is enabled. 0 means it's disabled. It's as simple as that. So keep that on 1. So the next one here, grid size Z, which I have set at 512. This is So this parameter here controls the resolution of the 3D voxel grid for volumetric fog along the depth z-axis from the camera's near plane out to its view distance. So what that means is that it defines how many slices or layers the volumetric fog grid is divided into along the depth of your view. So a higher value equals a higher quality, a finer depth resolution. So essentially you can go as high as 768, 1024, you could even go up to higher than, you can even double that if you wanted to. I have it set at 512 and so far it's working well for me there. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I've had it as low as 256, but it starts to look much better at 512. So lastly, the temporal reprojection, which is set at 1, is really a form of temporal anti-aliasing tailored for volumetric effects. So when the fog is really inherently noisy, shimmering, or it's unstable, it's usually because the 3D grid voxels is relatively coarse, which means these numbers are really low. So the light rays passing through the fog might not hit the exact same voxel sample point in consecutive frames as the camera or objects move, so it's going to look like as if it's flickering. I mean, if you see my first videos where I had fog, just from a few weeks ago, and my fog was flickering, well, I didn't use any of these things, and the reason why was because the temporal reprojection console variable needed to be set to 1, and it was set at 0. So if you have this set to 1, it's going to enable temporal smoothing, and it's going to greatly reduce the noise and flickering, and that's what you want. All right, so that's pretty much it. Let's go ahead and start. Oh, and before I forget, anti-aliasing, I'd keep these at a minimum of 8. So I wouldn't go any higher than these. If you go a little bit higher, you can do temporal sample count is where you want to increase it, and you have to do it in doubles. So you can start off at 8, and then you go to 16, 32, 64. But every time you do that, you're increasing the render time dramatically. So I just keep it at 8 and 8, which is really simple. And I'm going to go ahead and click on render. So I clicked on render, and let's see the first few frames that we get. That's pretty much how we create these cones of fog light, if you will, underwater. And we could do multiples of them, and once we render all the frames together, it's not going to flicker. It's going to look really great.